Some of you know that my daughter is a dancer. Actually, all of those ladies that showed up a little late, they're all dancers. But I'm going to talk about my daughter for a little bit. She gets told sometimes that she has beautiful movement naturally, and I am sure that's true, that this child was born with a lot of natural talent. But the reality is, from my perspective, she spends hours a week practicing. And I don't mean just at the studio. This child never stops dancing. She dances in grocery store aisles. Some of you may have been almost kicked by my child dancing around the church because she's not always paying attention to how big her movements are. She dances at home. We've even been known to have to push furniture to the side off our hard floor so that she could practice a move that she's been struggling with in dance practice. She will dance if we ask her to sit too long, and sometimes I have even caught her dreaming about dancing because her whole body is like jerking as she sleeps. She's always chasing the next thing, but it's because she wants that perfect routine. She wants it to look effortless on stage. Why am I telling you this? Because during Lent, during the season of Lent, we are going to explore spiritual disciplines together. Now, we're not going to get a chance to cover everything that could ever be said about spiritual disciplines. There are entire encyclopedias written about spiritual disciplines. There's smorgasbords of stuff you can put together. So this is more like a basics class. Imagine if I was teaching you a cooking class. This cooking class would be how to chop vegetables, how to boil water, how to bake and roast things without burning them. This is the basic building blocks that enable you to take off and create a meal that is beautiful and wonderful. Dancing and cooking are actually great analogies for spiritual disciplines. And that's because the purpose of discipline is freedom. The purpose of discipline is freedom. You're going to hear that a lot this morning. The purpose of learning to chop, boil, bake, and roast is not just so you can chop, boil, bake, and roast. The purpose of doing all of that is the meal, the deliciousness, the nourishment, the hospitality, even the art that some people create, the visual beauty that is edible, right? Just like in Maggie's world, the purpose of the endless drills in dance isn't the drill. It's the control of their body, it's the beauty, it's the art, it's the musicality. Richard Foster, whose book Celebration of Discipline is the major secondary source behind this series, says this: every discipline has its corresponding freedom. The purpose of the disciplines is freedom. Our aim is the freedom, not the discipline. The moment we make the discipline our central focus, we turn it into law and lose the corresponding freedom. Now, what I hope your next question is, what do I need to be set free from? Why are we talking about freedom? Aren't I free already? Great question. So let me ask you a couple follow-up questions. Are we actually free? Do you really feel free? Think for a second. Do you really feel emotionally regulated and on top of your life most of the time? Do you really have a deep, abiding, daily, life-giving relationship with God? Or do you lose sleep because your brain is going too fast constantly and there are too many things to worry about? Maybe you have no idea where your time and your paycheck go every month. You get to the end of the week and you're like, I feel like I accomplished nothing, and yet I never stopped moving. Maybe you find yourself snapping at your friends, your partner, your kids, or even just the dog for wanting some affection. Maybe you're feeling perpetually behind and overwhelmed. The answer to so much of this, I really, really believe, is the disciplines that lead to freedom. The purpose of discipline is freedom. Again, from Foster. In contemporary society, our adversary majors in three things: noise, hurry, and crowds. And I would add social media is a crowd. If the adversary keeps us engaged in muchness and manyness, he will rest satisfied. Psychiatrist Carl Jung once remarked, "Hurry is not of the devil, it is the devil." But, and maybe this is like the okay, kind of slightly bad news, you can't just jump to the freedom. You can't be like, oh, I'm stressed and worried, I'm just going to let that all go, right? Again, back to my tiny dancer. As much as she looks like Gumby now, she did not start there. She did not just drop into the splits one day. The fact that she has the splits represents months, years of effort on her part, right? We can't just jump into the freedom. We do have to engage in the discipline, and it will feel like work. Sometimes it will even feel like drudgery and dryness. But if we keep at it, if we make the sacrifices in order to engage in the discipline, if we make space for the work, the freedom comes, because the purpose of the discipline is freedom. So let's begin. Our reading today is from Psalm 119, verse 97 through 112. Psalm 19 is the longest psalm. And if you're opening your pew Bibles, which our particular reading is on page 478, you will see these Hebrew letters above each section. It's because in the Hebrew, every section, all those sentences under that section start with that Hebrew letter. It's an acrostic poem to the beautifulness of the word and teaching and power of God. So, this is 97 through 112. I love your instruction. I think about it constantly. Your commandment makes me wiser than my enemies, because it is always with me. I have greater insight than all my teachers, because I contemplate your laws. I have more understanding than the elders, because I guard your precepts. I haven't set my feet on any evil path, so I can make sure to keep your word. I haven't deviated from any of your rules, because you are the one who has taught me. Your word is so pleasing to my taste buds, it's sweeter than honey in my mouth. I'm studying your precepts, that's why I hate every false path. Your word is a lamp before my feet and a light for my journey. I have sworn, and I fully mean it, I will keep your righteous rules. I have been suffering so much, Lord, make me live again according to your promise. Please, Lord, accept my spontaneous gifts of praise. Teach me your rules. Though my life is constantly in danger, I won't forget your instruction. Though the wicked have set a trap for me, I won't stray from your precepts. Your laws are my possession forever because they are my heart's joy. I have decided to keep your statutes forever, every last one. Here ends the reading. Spirit of God, stir up your people.
Thanks be to God.
We're going to talk about two disciplines every time we gather, and I have tried to put them together so that they make sense with each other. And today, our two disciplines are meditation and study. They both involve disciplining our mind. The freedom that they lead to is freedom from a frantic pace of life. Freedom from scattered thoughts, from distractions. In Foster's language, they are freedom from manyness. Which, by the way, sometimes when I read that, I have in mind The Last Samurai. Did everyone ever see that movie? Tom Cruise, right? He couldn't figure out how to fight because they told him he had too many mind, right? That was my favorite phrase. And so that's the manyness we're talking about. There's so much happening in here that we can't do any one thing. And so meditation and study set us free from manyness. They are two sides of the same coin because meditation is devotional. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's closer to prayer. It's designed to fill us up with God's presence, while study is analytical. It's about comprehension, deeper understanding, and growing in wisdom. but they feed each other, right? You can imagine as you comprehend more of God's word or who God is, you will feel drawn to meditate more deeply on these truths and to fall more in love with God. And as you meditate more deeply, you will grow in curiosity and long to study God and God's activity in the world. Do you see how they fit together in this endless cycle? We need to study in order to meditate, and as we meditate, we grow in our need to study. Now, Foster has one piece of his book that I disagree with. He argues that we should not talk about the secondary benefits of these disciplines, but I disagree with this because God created our bodies and minds to be good. We are stewards of our bodies and minds as much as any other thing in creation. So when we think about meditation and study, this isn't just about praying and praising to God. Both meditation and the type of study we'll be talking about have been shown to reduce stress, to increase creativity, to increase emotional regulation and resilience. Study increases our self-esteem and our competence. Both of these activities are good for our brain health. They keep our brains young. They combat things like dementia. They help with things like ADHD, right? And you will never hear me say, don't take your medicine, don't go to a therapist. But if you need medication or you go to a therapist, study and meditation are good partners for that as well. So they will help keep us healthy. So now let's get into the rubber, where the rubber hits the road. If you're a note taker, this is the place to start taking notes, by the way. Here's how to study. Study involves 4 steps. The first is repetition. Repetition of reading. Repetition regularly channels the mind in a specific direction, thus ingraining habits of thought. Those are Foster's words. It isn't just about rereading something in order to reread it or memorize it. Repetition is more like muscle memory for your brain. We have a couple teachers in our midst, actually, but one I know who teaches English, and I bet she could tell you that the first time a kid picks up Shakespeare, they have no idea what's going on, right? The Bible is the same. If you were to walk up to a complete stranger and open the Bible to them and ask them to read it, they wouldn't necessarily be able to understand the words that are happening because the cadence, the grammar, the vernacular of the text are all different than how we talk today. Unless you're reading the Message, right? It's very bizarre when we open up the Bible. So repetition exists to train our brain to think in the flow with the text. We train our brain to understand how this flows, how the words work together. This even becomes important if we decide to pick up and study like the Desert Fathers and Mothers, which are highly recommended, or the Devotional Masters. If you've ever tried to read like Kierkegaard, it takes a couple times through to start to understand how and why Kierkegaard is writing this way. So repetition, in order to get our brains used to the structure. The next step of study is concentration, and this means singular focus. I have bought into the lie, and I love to say, or used to love to say, that I can multitask. But we know now that multitasking is a fib. We're not actually concentrating on multiple things at once. Our brain is playing pinball with us, and we are bouncing between things, and we're not quite catching everything. This is not a habit for good study. Good study requires a singular focus on what we're looking at. So that may mean putting our electronic devices on Do Not Disturb while we're studying, right? Turning off our notifications. Now, if you're like me and you require background noise because your brain will invent its own squirrels if you don't have something else going on, I recommend white noise or music without words because it's the words that are the distracting part, right? So concentration, repetition, concentration. The third part of study is comprehension. It's exactly what it means. We have to understand what we're reading. This is where commentaries, dictionaries, Google, ChatGPT, all of that can help us as we look up unfamiliar words. And then the fourth step of study is reflection. Study is not helpful to us unless we reflect how it's useful in our lives, what we've learned from the experience that we've just engaged in. Foster says it doesn't matter how many books we read, it matters that we read them deeply and that we reflect on what we're studying. So don't feel pressure to all of a sudden read all the theological texts. The phrase that I grab onto here, the benefit of study, is back in the day when they were inventing computers, one of the computer inventors came out with this phrase that said garbage in, garbage out. And he was referring to data. If you put bad data in a computer, you're going to get bad results, right? You can't just invent good results. The same is true for us and our brains. If we're taking in garbage or worthless things come out of us. This study is an opportunity for us to take in good things, gospel things, holy things, and good gospel holy things will come out of us. Scripture tells us that the transformation of our minds leads to the transformation of our lives. Okay, that's study. Let's talk meditation. Meditation is when we create emotional and spiritual space, which allows Christ to construct a sanctuary in our heart. The stillness of meditation is a practice that isn't just about the 5, 10, 20 minutes that we spend doing it. It's about creating an inner stillness that we can go to whenever life is frantic around us. A good book about this is Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, right? It's about cultivating a stillness so that when the kids are screaming and running around, when there's 1,000 things to do, and that overwhelmed feeling that we're starting to feel creeps in, we have this place of peace that passes understanding within us that we can retreat to and breathe into, and it allows us to move through that anxiety and stress. But it starts with focused time of meditation. Now, Christian meditation is different than Eastern meditation. Eastern meditation is what you see when the people are sitting like crisscross applesauce and they got their palms up, right? And they're doing that, they're saying some sort of weird syllable. I didn't mean to say weird. That just came out. I'm not trying to judge anybody. Eastern meditation is about emptying your mind. Christian meditation is about filling up your mind. And it's filling up your mind with the presence of God, with the truth that comes from the Bible, with God's Spirit. So you can see how the two ideas are very different, but the outward practice will look similar. You can sit crisscross applesauce if you want to and lay your hands palm up and ask to receive God's presence. You sit however you feel led. Meditation is best done when we're sitting comfortably, but not in a position where we'll fall asleep. And that we have something to meditate on, some idea. You could spend eons meditating on the truth that God is love, right? Trying to absorb that truth. So there's a lot of different ways you can meditate. It's very personal. It's a little harder to give you steps into meditation, but having a place you can go that's quiet, having time set apart where you can be focused. Again, just like study, it requires quiet and concentration and a singular focus. It requires turning off the notifications on your phone. Meditation is helped by very deep breathing. If nothing else, just count your breaths and give thanks to God for the fact that you're breathing, right? Sometimes it's helpful, and in a little bit what we're going to try is Lectio Divina. It's a type of meditation, or to contemplate the stained glass windows if you're more of a visual person. So those are the basic instructions of study and meditation.